All right. So now we are live on YouTube. Let's wait for Instagram for a little bit and then we'll go ahead, hop in and get started. I might move over a little bit so I can get this good light. Get this good light. Yeah, I'm actually gonna do that. So get in here, get some light as you will see it go down. All right. So welcome to episode 12 of Parlez with Sensei Shui. In today's topic, we will be talking about your word, the importance of sticking to what you say you're going to do. When you say you're going to do something weekly, doing it weekly, regardless if you have support or not. If you say you're going to do something, follow through. Why do I say when you do something, follow through? It's more for yourself. It reflects on others, and you always hear, hey, it's really important for you to stick to your word. But why? Why? Because first, if you can be honest with yourself and stick to your word, the word is thy bond. It's almost like your will being spoken. If you notice each time you say something, what do we say? Say, oh, do you want to come to the store with me? Oh, yes, I will do that. All right. So when we're saying will, what energy center, where is communication being started from? It's starting from the solar plexus. All right. The center of the will. And so for us, when we say these things, it's very important that we align with our intentions. We align with what it is we want to say in order for these to be felt. And so when I think about it and it comes to me about why consistency is key, is you need to go outside and look and reflect at nature, not just looking and smelling the pretty flowers, but really going in and seeing how that flower bloomed, how that tree found its place, how somehow now you could always put concrete down, but the roots still continue to crack the sidewalk. Because nature is one thing that is consistent. And with consistency, one of my favorite parts about it is that you do not need to rush. It's about quality in the consistency. Because oftentimes when we rush, the quality and the care goes down. That's why they call it a careless mistake. So the importance of consistency is to stay true to yourself, to stay true to what it is you say you want to do. Because just like nature, the tree is consistent as it grows, and now it has the ability to crack sidewalks. Likewise for you, when you have your goals, your intentions, it was a new moon, a solar eclipse, and the summer solstice all on the same day. If you're in the southern hemisphere, the winter solstice, aka a really big time for change. A bunch of change energies getting thrown in our faces. So what do we do at this time? One of the things to do at this time is to really find that time to find your center. That is to maybe put the phone to the side, really spend some time with your breathing, take out a notebook, and then write some notes about what it is that you want to do. Write down your intentions. And why do I say intentions and not desires? All right. So for desires, you could think of this hypothetical situation. Say you're a parent and you get this 4-year-old a gift, something that they've always wanted, but they didn't know. So you got them this like really cool doll, right? Or action figure. I was like, it's not a doll, it's an action figure. I remember saying that. But you get them this, and then you give them the doll, and they're like, that's cool, but I wanted the Godzilla. And why didn't I get the tractor like the kid down the street? Almost this ungratitude. I'll get into that in a second. It's almost like this lack of gratitude is almost showing that what we have in this abundant state of what we receive is not even enough. It's almost showing a lack of gratitude for what we already have. So likewise, when we put desire in it, it's in a way it is more ego, but in the way desire is almost like a lack of gratitude or seeing that what we already have is enough. And that's why I say intentions, because sometimes what we think is the best for us is not the best. It's our intentions. It's just like where you ended up right now is probably not where you thought you were going to be 5 years ago, but you had some intention or some idea of where you're going to end up. But now this is where you're at based on what the intentions and what you did consistency. What you did with consistency has led you to the path you're on now. So if you're seeing where you want to go, consistency will be the teller that will help true how this tale comes to fruition about how consistent you are with your actions. That is the importance of consistency. So in a way, desire in a way is more ego, but again, what is the role of the ego? Oftentimes you see in spiritual circles, oh, you need to be egoless. We need to not talk about this. Oh, the ego, the ego. Well, first, let's say, what is the ego? I say the ego is this acknowledgement of the self, right? The acknowledgement that, say, the ego would be, say, that the identity of, oh, my body is ego, right? When you're saying I, or I would say better, me, oh, it's all about me. When you're thinking that, oh, when I need to do this, I need to grab this pick. I need to get this dog. I need to do this and build my body up. I need to do this to create, a legacy for myself and do this and do this. That's ego. All right. For that, it has a role though. All right. So ego, and I would say in itself, I talked about this a few episodes back, but ego in itself has a role of translating, you could say almost pushing the spirit to accomplish things. Because without the ego, there's this not really a sense of identity. There's not this drive to do purpose. So more when you have people who say they have had an ego death like myself, it's more realizing ego is a tool for something. It's not something to get lost in. You could say, I'm not Shui. Shui is the character that I play. It's the character I play in this game that is reality, in this game that is the Matrix, in this boat that I'm sailing merrily down the stream, in this play that I'm merely an actor, just like Shakespeare, likewise for yourself. And so when it is where we want to go and where we want to end up, consistency is the key. Because oftentimes you see people trying to really make things complicated. Somehow in this day and age, somehow if you say more words and it's more complicated, somehow that's the best way to go. But in some things, it's like, hey, if you just do something every day and put a little work in, you're going to go a long way. That classic tortoise versus the hare. Because if you find yourself being like the hare, you'll go, but then your body and your mind will naturally tire out. And then the next thing you know, someone passed you up that you didn't even think was on the radar. The thing is, they found what worked for them on a consistent basis and realized it wasn't about flexing on others. Because Gary Vee had this really nice thing he said. He was like, yeah, if you find yourself really concerned about the result that you're trying to get, if you care about what other people are going to think, that's a huge sign that what you're trying to accomplish is not for you, that you're still bothered and attached to what other people think about you. So you really need to go in and check. Because if it was really for ourselves, if it was really for yourself, the timetable would not really be like, oh, well, I got to get this done in 3 months. And it's different if you got a deadline. Okay, that makes sense. Like a true deadline. Like for me, I got to put together an outline to present to my team. So for that, like, yeah, I got a deadline for it. But otherwise, when it comes to being consistent, go at the pace that works with you. If you're trying to flex on others and show like, oh, by the time I get this is when I'm going to show up. That's a significance that'd be, hey, it might be like, if you're like me trying to prove something to your father, if you're like me trying to show something to the people you used to go to school with, if you're like me, it's trying to almost sometimes show more to those people that you almost never liked. It's an interesting thing when you got to be real with yourself sometimes. When it's like people do things to impress people they wouldn't talk to and don't even like. So when it comes to this, how does this play out? And be like, oh, yeah, that's not like me. But how to see this quote or something that we hear these sayings, how do we see this playing out in our lives on a daily basis? How do we see that aspect that someone maybe drives us subconsciously? Because that's the biggest thing. Our conscious mind oftentimes knows what's going on. But if you look at neuroscience and look up how much does the subconscious run, like how much of the time are you subconscious? Subconscious goes about 80 to 90% of the time, aka habits. What is a habit? That is something you do without conscious thinking, a subconscious act. So habits, aka your subconscious mind running things. So when you want to change your habits, a lot of that thing is changing the way you consistently address things. And the thing is going at a slow pace. Slower is faster. slower is faster. What do I mean by that? I mean by that sometimes when you slow down, you set yourself up for success. So instead of trying to change 21 things, change three and stick to those three and just be honest with yourself. If you mess up, it's okay. You don't got to punish yourself. Just keep going, keep pushing on forward. Change those three things, do it for 21, 30, 40 days. The things that really stuck and that worked out, they will remain. The things that didn't, take note. Like when I say take note, like literally write down and take note of what didn't work so you could go back and read it. And then come back in a few days, start another cycle of changing the way you consistently address something. Because I like to talk about diets for this because oftentimes we're like, oh, I need to eat better. I need to eat better. I want to stop eating meat. Well, if you want to do that, the best way to do it is to not stop eating meat. I know that sounds weird. It was like, wait. Hold on for a second. What I mean by that is to, if you're wanting to be like, you know what, I want to move towards a vegetarian style because now it's a trend and people are learning some more things about how it affects their bodies. But it's like, okay, if you really want to set yourself up for success, I would say start with going every other day. Like, okay, go every other day. One day, that's a vegetarian day, vegan day. Next day, eat your meat. Next day, vegetarian, vegan day. Next day, do it. And then from that, start to work back instead of like, okay, as of this date, never ever again. Because like how something started is likewise something ends, right? Or rather, how you build a foundation really stands the test of times. It shows how it will stand. Did you build your house upon the sand? You build a house upon the rock? You build it in some mud? And when you built it, did you rush it or did you really take your time digging deep and really trying to figure out why you want to do these things? So if it's things like working out or if anything like me, if you're trying to be kinder and more gentle with yourself, it's things like, okay, let me write down and realize why I'm maybe so harsh. Why do I have these ungodly expectations of myself? Is it from me or is it something that someone else is imposing on me? If it's someone else imposed on me, why do I have this need to try to impress them, to try to make them feel like, oh, well, I got to make them proud. Well, why can't we just make ourselves proud? Because at the end of the day, the people we may be trying to impress really just want to see us happy. But in the way that plays out sometimes is in a very more distorted way. Because how? A lot of these things are generational. What I mean by that is passed down from families. You hear it called family trauma, genetic trauma, past life trauma, AKA, in layman's terms, the way one person did something and treated someone became a learned behavior that they saw was normal. And so when they came up with that next thing, they treated someone in the same way, saw that behavior, taught it as normal, did the same to the next person, thought it as normal, and passed on to the next thing. That's the basis of generational trauma, of family healing, of going through and changing these patterns by being consistent on what we need to do. So in layman's terms, if we want to change something, we need to realize what are these triggers? What are these reasons that we react to something instead of make a decision? All right, that's a huge thing. How often are we reacting to something and not being still and then deciding on how we want to do something? And for that, that's something for you and myself, for us to be honest about. Because sometimes we're in more of a reactionary state of consciousness, a reactionary state of mind. When, oh, something comes up, I'm like, oh, I'm so mad, BLM, BLM, all right. Or something comes on in the news like, okay, this has been going on for a long time. What's a way that I can contribute to this? All right, I'm feeling a lot of mis-ease and really disturbed inside my heart. Let me go and like settle myself and meditate, and then let me see how I could take action for this and educate myself about what's going on. Because otherwise, if you're reacting, you could be pushed just like the feather in the wind. You might think you know where you're going, but you are being directed. And that's an entire thing in and of itself. More of the act to be decisive and not reactive. And with that, what goes in hand with that? Being consistent on our reflections, being consistent, I like to say, on the spiritual fitness sides of things. What I mean by that is find you something, and what I mean by spiritual, something with going inside, right? Something to go inside and check yourself. If your meditation is swimming, if it's running, if it's doing yoga, if it's dancing, if it's walking, if it's drawing, if it's playing music, whatever it be, having your time to do that. And then I encourage whatever medium you do to write down what you experience, to write down what came to mind. Because oftentimes I remember myself, I swam for quite a while, right? For about 17, 18 years. I'd have some great realizations in the pool, right? When I'm just going and minding my happy business. But then I get back and I kind of forgot everything. It just literally like left in the water. But sometimes if say I got out and wrote something down, which I do now sometimes after my yoga sessions, I'm getting better at that. But things that come up, and especially if they stick, write it down so that way I can see these patterns within myself, see how I can start to make changes in my life. Because it's the things that we do with consistency that stick. If you want to say, look at the language we use to describe things, when people are like, oh yeah, I'm stuck in a rut. Okay, how is a rut created? By walking the same path consistently, and then there's a line in the mark. Just like in my backyard, right by my garden, there's a path, right? That's starting to carve itself off because I walk around the same little trajectory every time and it's making its own pathway, right? So likewise, how do you do that in your life, right? You could say you want to make it a rut, something negative, or do you want to have what's the path that you've been walking, right? What's the path you walk consistently because that is what's being created. When you want to change it, be conscious of where you're walking and then, maybe make a step or two in a different direction. Don't try to bust a whole U on it. You might just flip over. All right. And then you're going to have to regroup. And that's a whole other thing in and of itself. So if anyone has any questions or anything you want me to talk on more, this is more like a Q&A base, but lately it's like, yeah, Shui just kind of talks. But I guess to continue on that, it's like, how do we stay consistent? And so with that, I have this practice I do daily. It's called 5-5-1-5. All right. So what it is, when I wake up in the morning, if you're more of a writer, you can write this. I'm more of a speaker, so I like to speak. Say 5 things that you're grateful for, 5 things that you will accomplish for the day. I like the word accomplish, not do, accomplish for the day. 1 thing that you'll do unconditionally for someone else, right? And when I mean doing unconditionally, I don't just mean maybe giving food to someone. I mean like being present with your family members. That's huge, right? 1 thing you'll do unconditionally, and then 5 things you accomplished yesterday. So things like something, say like what I accomplished yesterday. So I guess, you know what? I'll go ahead and do it, right? I did it, but let me do it again. And then this might take a little time because let me do it. Yes. Journaling daily is great. And sometimes even mixing up with different prompts really helps. I find myself, because sometimes it's like the questions that we need to ask ourselves are best by, someone else. They ask themselves questions and they shared that with us. So what it would look like is like, okay, I'm grateful for waking up this morning because a few people didn't get that opportunity. I'm grateful for the roof over my head because it stormed today. And there are people in my city that do not have that luxury. I'm grateful that I have a family that loves me, and that for Father's Day, I saw my dad smile more than I ever have probably my entire life. That was really huge. I'm grateful for that. I'm grateful for the partner I have, extremely supportive in my journey and where I'm going. And I'm grateful for this opportunity to be able to share wisdom, knowledge, and methodologies with people all around the world, because just 30, 40 years ago, this would not be possible. All right, what will I accomplish for the day? Well, I'll say some things I accomplished because it's towards the evening. I'll have a meeting with my team. I'll write a brief in order to send off to some stakeholders. I'm going to do my podcast. I'm going to meditate 1 more time. And then I'm going to read and take notes, because that's a big thing need to get that I've been improving on, is reading books and then taking notes, like in a journal, about the things that came through to really help me retain better. What am I going to do what am I going to do unconditionally for someone? So the thing that I'm going to do unconditionally is give my presence and share my wisdom with the intention of sharing my wisdom. And if I have an intention of it, it's to help raise the awareness and the consciousness of this planet. All right. What did I accomplish yesterday? I spent time with my father and had just present conversation. I got him like a floor jack for cars for Father's Day because he likes to work on cars. He was so happy. He was like, "You really brought me a jack? Where'd you hide it?" I had to hide it in the attic and then like really bring it down. I'm like, ugh. But anyway, that made him really happy. I helped my mom set up like this dinner, like cut up watermelon, all this stuff. She had some friends come over after he went to sleep. Um, I communicated efficiently with one of my business partners. That was really good. We laid out a plan for where we're going. I got a really solid meditation in yesterday, and then I actually successfully journaled. So that is the 5515 method, right? So for me, doing that every day. So it's like, wait, what's the purpose of doing that? All right. So when you're starting your day with things that you're grateful for, and then things that you were accomplished and that you have accomplished before, that programs your mind to expect abundance and gratitude. Doing anything consistently, like I said, it determines the path that you walk on. Oftentimes we see the word rut, the rut. All right, just look at where you walk in your backyard on a consistent basis, or where humans walk, or where tire tracks are on the road. That creates a pattern from consistency. So let's flip this to the positive mindset and be like, all right, when we want to change something, what different steps are we going to take in order to get somewhere different? Because if we're not going to change anywhere in the way we're walking, we're going to always go to the same spot, whether we like it or not. We could look somewhere else, but if we don't change where our feet are going, we're going to end up in the same destination. But what does that call for? That calls for awareness. That calls for consciousness. That calls for self-reflection, for us to realize, okay, how can I start to step differently because I've been doing this longer than I can remember? It's become habitual. Habitual. A habit is habits done unconsciously or by the subconscious mind. So we need to take some work. And I like to say slower is faster, picking 2 or 3 things to change, and be gentle and kind with ourselves with change, is not punishing ourselves. Maybe sometimes being stern, but not punishing ourselves nor being harsh in order to make these changes. Because what does that do? That just almost, it's that reverse mechanism. Like if you're like me and you had a coach that somehow thought that screaming at people was motivational, like that with ourselves oftentimes doesn't work. But encouraging ourselves and rewarding ourselves really helps train that dopamine reward circuit for us to actually make sustainable change in our lives. So with me, how do I do this? Is by reflection and by journaling, like really writing down where I've gone, where I've been on the moons, writing down my intentions. And then actually when they come to fruition, it's like, yo, this stuff is real. Like I'm going to keep doing this. I'm really going to keep doing this because the power of intention and consistency is magic in and of itself. That in itself is manifestation. You see things all over the place, but just being consistent with your actions, and the biggest thing is actions when it comes to manifestation. People like to do all these rituals and you see all these courses and all these things. But one thing that's not talked about enough is that plain action, that other 50% on the physical side of the metaphysical, to actually take action to see these things come through, to really use that will, right? Use that willpower, right? The will. We say it all the time. We spell it all the time. Hey, are you going to go to the store later on? Yeah, I will go to the store later on, or right? Speaking from here, activating that energy center, the strength of the will comes with how well we keep our word. To whom? Ourselves. Because yeah, you could say, oh, word to others, but who is the one that's making the bond? Who's the one that signed the contract? Who's the hand that's on that metaphorical pen, right? It's ours, right? It's ours, it's yours, whoever it is that is speaking. That makes this agreement. Because when the word is broken, who breaks it? It's us to ourselves, and other people have the effect of that. And so to be conscious of these things, the stronger you align yourself with your word, the more things start to line up with your intentions. And when I found myself, what helped me with getting better with keeping my word is being conscious of when I'm speaking and being realistic about when I can't do something, right? Setting boundaries. Because oftentimes when I have broken my will, why was it? Because I just said something knowing damn well that I could not do it. But for some reason, when it's like, hey, can you help me out with this? Or do you want to do this? And can you take this on? I'm just like, oh, yeah, sure, I'll do that. Okay, no. Oh, yeah, sure. Without consideration, like, okay, something I already took on is going to occupy like 60% of my time. And then I have my daily rituals I'm going to do. Some things aren't going to go away. And then give credence to the daily dough of life that kind of keeps us waddling in the mud. And then all these other things, yeah, we fall short. Yes, we forget. But in some things, we set ourselves up to forget by not being like, hey, you know what? If you could text me, or this might not work the best for me because I'm a little overcommitted right now. And then communicating that in a clear, efficient, and I would say direct manner in a way is establishing boundaries. And what I mean is boundaries, not like, oh, stay away, but boundaries like of your time and your space. Because if anything, you see all this stuff about, oh, buying gold, buy gold, buy gold. I'm not going to talk about that. One of the biggest currencies you need to invest in is your time, right? That is something that you can say everyone gets, and we get to decide what we want to do with it. Yes, it's a construct. That's the thing for another day, another podcast. However, we all get the same amount of time. It's how we decide to use it, how we decide to invest it, and the biggest thing, how we decide to value it, right, for ourselves. It's not for others and, oh, my value is X amount, so I make da 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 da. Another talk for another time. For now, it's more valuing your time, because if you don't value your time yourself, other people will not either. Why? Because for every reaction, there's an equal and opposite reaction, right? So if we're not valuing it ourselves, we're going to attract situations with other people who also do not value it, right? If we make this story about being angry in the world and things aren't fair, what do we attract? What lens do we interpret reality out of, right? We interpret it in a way that, oh, things might not be going fairly. Why? Because that's how we tell the story to ourselves. So that is what we perceive. So by changing the way we perceive, being consistent with how we shift our perspectives will shift what we're attracting. It's not like a magic on-off switch. No, rather, when we shift the way we perceive, when we shift the way we decide to perceive reality, when we shift the way that we interpret and the steps we take, that creates this path in the grass, that's when we could start to change the story and attract different situations that align with our intentions. And again, with how I started this entire podcast is setting intentions, right? Because where you're at right now, 5, 7 years ago, I bet you couldn't say exactly what would be going on right now. You had an intention, you had a general idea, and this is where we are today, right? So likewise, where you want to be, say next year, 2, 3, 5, 7, 10, 20 years, set your intentions, right? Set your intentions and write them down. Because in writing, I found this is something my father told me, right? And it was the most insane thing. He was like, yeah, you really need to write your stuff down, because everything you write down in a goal journal, it becomes true. And then he goes out and then he takes out this like yellowing journal and he like puts it on. He's like, yeah, it's kind of falling apart. And in a way, from the place he was coming from, it was like he's coming from a place where he almost feels like he's falling apart. And then he's reading it and he was like, I really wish I was more specific with what I wrote down and what I said I was going to do. Because he's like, all these things became true, but I was so vague with it that it manifested itself. But I guess in it, because he was, this is back in the day, because he's almost 60. So this was like you look at the Robert Kiyosaki's and things like that, Napoleon Hill, he was reading that stuff and they talk about this. And then so he was doing it. But when it came to the extent, it was like of being kind of more specific with our intentions, what we want and how we want it to play out, because in one way or another, it plays out. Might not be exactly how I wrote it in, but the story that we write for ourselves, it's almost like we're writing our own play in this movie that is of the reality and the conscious experience that we live in, right? Think about it. What do they call the way someone behaves? They call it their character, right? When you're watching a movie, what is it the person you're watching? That's a character, all right? What do they call when, someone is, say, a mother, a father, a daughter, a son, a husband, a wife? Those are roles, right? So there's some things that to realize, some things not to take it seriously, and other things it's like, yeah, not as seriously, but realize, hey, you know what? This entire reality and conscious experience is pretty malleable. What that basically means, it's clay-like. You can adjust it. And I like to use the word like clay, because just like clay, it starts out pretty soft when you're younger, but then as it gets older, it gets harder and harder and harder to really adjust things. Some stuff you might even have to start way over, like you see some people do, and like really uproot, re-wet it, slam that thing a few times, and go again. Yeah, I was about to show you some clay thing I made that I tried to do too much and just opened up, and a cup became a bowl, but it still works and the colors are cool. But anyway, where I was going with that is when it comes to how you want to shape your life, be patient, be kind, be gentle with yourself, and like the theme of this episode, stay consistent. And when it comes to if you're trying to be kinder with yourself and not as harsh and want to discover some of these stagnant thought patterns you have, highly encourage you to check out my free course on Skillshare called Getting Unstuck, Discovering Stagnant Thought Patterns, and Identifying, I forgot the second part of it. But literally, if you go on Skillshare.com, type in Getting Unstuck, you'll find it. And the YouTube, after this is posted, I'll put the link underneath so y'all can go there. It's a free course, FREE. It's free 99. All it costs is 30 minutes of your time and almost the pain of honesty with yourself. I share a story, a true story of myself of how I was interpreting my reality. So what this is, it's a worksheet that I've created that I call mental mapping. It starts out by identifying, say, something significant or a childhood memory that, say, something traumatic or even something that you remember that basically interprets and tells the story about like why you experience what you experience to this day. Because the stories we tell ourselves manifest to be true in our subconscious. So these stories we tell ourselves, for them to be true, they become true, they become true. Just like you could say that people were like, oh, well, all women are so-and-so, all men are so-and-so, all people who are this color are so-and-so, all people that are that color are so-and-so. No matter what evidence is presented to them, that's the story that will be true because that's how they wanted to be told. Well, what happens when you want to change it? Well, we must change the narrative and gain a different understanding or perspective. So what this does is really map you through about, say, what happened when I was 8 years old. I write it out. I share the story. Okay, so what was my reason, my childhood reason to why this happened, right? Then because this happened to me, what is the effects of this story in my life? Okay, and from that, what are the consequences? What is the reason I give to this? And it loops back to the front story. And then it goes into different ways that you can start to move out to it. And I share this story, like it's literally a PDF you download and you can print and you write everything down and then you do it. If you really want to do the work, the thing is you got to do the work, and one way or another. This is just a free resource I offer people because it helped me out a whole lot. And really seeing these things on paper was like, whoa, my grandfather passed away when I was 8, really did change the way I connect with humans. But then once I identify that, it's almost like a light turned on. And then things started to improve from there. So with that, if there are no other questions, I want to thank you for joining me today. And thank you for your presence. For those of y'all who are watching on TikTok, help me get to 10K. And then that's when I will start to go live on TikTok as well. And that's going to be another thing because there are a lot of people on there. All right. And so thank you for joining me. For those who are listening to the repeat, the meditation will begin shortly. And until then, have a nice day and namaste. Thank you, Allegria. Yeah, North Carolina was super dope, by the way. Thank you. I still remember that. It was like a really fun time. It was really cool.